I think we need to be brutally honest about how much the world has changed in the past 1 year. Now, I try not to be emotional about markets. I think about markets in two ways. The first thing is as a trader, where you're really trading what the market is thinking. And the second is as an investor, where you're trying to predict what the outcomes and consequences are going to be of whatever's happening. And it's quite clear that last year, Trump was going to be the dominant factor. Just in the first 3 weeks of this year, it's like he's completely taken over every single corner of thinking in the markets. It really has been quite extraordinary. And I think if we're going to figure out what the consequences of Trump are going to be, we need to be brutally honest and frank about what it is that's happening, rather than try and explain it all. Oh, it's just politics. We can't take him seriously. Oh, and he's not going to invade Greenland, that kind of thing. The fact is, he says these things and they have consequences. So I've really got three things for people to think about this morning on this, the first anniversary of Trump. But before we do that, maybe just a quick chat about Davos. Everyone's there in Davos. I understand that the number of AI firms is thicker than a 7-meter high snowdrift. And they're all there telling everybody about how they're going to improve their businesses
exactly.
by
This
using
is why
AI.
you need to invest. This is how it's going to revolutionize your business and save you so much money if you are a CEO.
Exactly. But the thing is that none of that is going to happen if we continue on the current path that we seem to be going down of constant shock, dislocation, distraction, destabilization, and frankly, destruction of value that I think is coming our way. And there are really a whole bunch of separate things happening in the market. Now, as I said, it's Davos. Everyone's got on their very expensive winter costumes, which will probably get never worn again. But no one's really paying attention to anything except what is Trump going to say tomorrow.
Exactly.
Because you've got this extraordinary thing that
now, it's
Europe...
going to be big, Bill. It's going to be big because, you know, I've been there many, many years, and I certainly do not miss the -20, but I miss the vibe, and I'm still on the mailing list for the daily Davos greeting, where they give you the briefing as to which Congress halls still have spaces, which ones are booked out, what the weather's going to be, where you're going to meet all these dignitaries, right? And the big thing this year that is different, Bill, is that I know the Reuters contingent and the Bloomberg contingent that they send there are much larger than normal.
Yeah, and it's extraordinary. It will be the largest ever US delegation. It's like Trump is surrounding himself with every single one of his advisors, and he's going to need their support because I think for the first time, he's going to be going into an audience that is not prepared to treat him like he's Presidium or the second coming of Christ. They're going to go in there with a different view. The era of European sycophancy ended last week. This is a new start. Now, I've often said people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, but even I have to admit that President Macron of France has said all the right things, turning down some of the nonsense that he's being presented with. Anyway, let's just have a little think about what's happened this year already ahead of whatever Trump is going to say. We've had, okay, I'm going to give Trump marks here. I'll give him full marks for what he did in Venezuela. You know, that the president napping of Maduro was extraordinary. It was extraordinarily well executed. It was against a lot of things that we've always considered stable, but probably on the face of it, pretty good thing. Had it been handled normally, we'd have been giving Trump very high marks for that. But then that just seemed to open the doors. The next thing we get is Jerome Powell under investigation. A clear assault on the independence of the Fed. Then we have the attacks and the threats on Greenland and Denmark, which have completely fractured NATO. And now the threat of tariffs on his supposed allies, which is getting pushback that we haven't seen before. And then, of course, we had the Venezuelan lady who had won the Peace Prize offer Trump her Peace Prize medal, and he accepted it. And then he sends this extraordinary email to the president of Norway saying that the reason that he is taking this attack on Greenland and Denmark is because Norway never gave him the Peace Prize. And then, of course, just yesterday, we see him offer all these paragons of justice and democracy and freedom, like Russia and Belarus, the ability to join his peace commission, which we all know is just him compensating for the fact that he doesn't like the United Nations. After all, they deliberately stopped an escalator on him last year. So he wants his own United Nations, and if you pay $1 billion to Trump Inc. in Qatar, you can become a member. Now, thank God that President Macron has had the good sense to turn it down. I hope everyone else does, because this is the kind of madness that is going to take over markets in the coming year. But the reality, of course, is very, very different. The key things that we need to think about for markets in the long term are, in the case of the US, how are they going to make AI work? And its enormous amount of energy that is required if they cannot get hold of of Chinese rare earths. Now, rare earths are not particularly rare. It's the processing of them that is the problem.
And
no matter how much the US seizes territory around the planet, it will still take them 10 years to build up that processing capability. And in that time, if China wants to play rough, then they could simply sanction exports of rare earths to America. Now, if that happens, that kills the whole thing we started off talking about, which is the US economy being rocket fueled by AI. Now, personally, I think an awful lot of the expectations of AI and how much it's going to change business are probably overplayed. If you look at some of the numbers coming out of the US last year, we had surveys saying that 90% of companies that were innovating AI were just not seeing the kind of improvements they were hoping for. Now, if that is reinforced by being unable to build out the infrastructure, then it gets worse. Now, the key here is not the US or China, it's actually Europe. What does Europe decide to do here? Now, if Europe was thinking the same way as America and choosing a Europe first approach, we would be linking up with China today. We would be offering them trade deals in
Just
return
like
for
Canada.
trade stability. Yeah. And that's exactly what Canada did last week. And I suspect...
Did you notice the wording? Did you notice the wording used by Mark Carney, which was fascinating?
What did he say, Ange?
There was a
Illuminate me.
brief pause, and I believe it was in a conference, a news conference, and he said something along the lines of, and don't quote me on this because I was several coffees down. I had a long day. It was the day when we had that huge sell-off and repricing in metals, and I was waiting with my shopping bag ready. And it was something along the lines of, there was a pause, and Mark Carney then said, New World Order, which I found fascinating in itself. Now, Bill, all of this is just smokescreen and noise. I'm going to be devil's advocate here because I really do think that, whatever he says about Greenland, whatever he says about Europe, all this is just a smokescreen to get the Trump supporters to have something else to cheer for before the midterm elections.
I suspect this is something far worse, Angie. I am really concerned about what I see happening in the States. As you know, I print a daily commentary, the Morning Porridge, which I send to my clients, and it's widely read. There's an awful lot of Americans on that subscriber base. I do get a lot of people telling me that I don't understand Trump. I get told that I have Trump derangement syndrome, but I do try to be unemotional about what's happening. The first thing here is to consider what is really happening in the States. And you think back to what America used to look like when we were younger, the bastion of truth, democracy, freedom, and all that. We grew up in a diet of American culture. America's soft power was enormous. Now, you take a look at what's happening just now, and you see these awful events on the streets of Minnesota. You see a paramilitary organization that has been enabled to swipe people off the streets and out of their jobs and deport them as enemies of the state. We see former policemen, FBI agents, opposition politicians, and guys who were just doing their job, defending the Capitol building, sacked and intimidated by the legal process. We see all kinds of things going on in the States that are not solving any of the issues that we saw arise the last couple of years, but actually increase that sense of a fractionalized states. Now, I look at that and I think, why would you continue to create that polarization unless you wanted to create doubt about the election that's coming? Now, history never repeats, but it does resonate, and there's an awful lot of things.
Yeah.
It resonates and rhymes. And I look at what's going on. And I know, just look behind me there at that bookcase. There are umpteen books about the Weimar Republic and Europe in the 1930s.
Have you got When Money Dies? That is an amazing book.
Well, the one that you should read about the period is Adam Tozay's book about, God, what's it called? It's there anyway, somewhere. The Wages of Destruction. It'll explain to you exactly what happens when economies go through. So I am very concerned that there's something deliberate.
Yeah, and what we learn from these books as well, Bill, and I know you have a love of history just like me, is that, these sort of changes have been happening for a long time. It's not something that just happens overnight.
No. Yeah. I disagree, Angie. This has happened.
Overnight?
I think this has all happened in the space of 1 year. Yes, it's been very easy for it to happen because, let's be brutally honest, the Biden administration was scared shitless by its own shadow, and it was an ineffective government. It did not act on the things it could have. It could have solved Ukraine completely. Instead, it's become a point of friction. Trump's strategy in the last year has been to push away his allies and engage the enemies as equals. And that has totally fractured the West. Now, there's many people who do believe that Trump is frankly some kind of Russian asset. Me, you'd need to convince me of that. But it just is extraordinary why he's willing to pay this. Now, it's painted by people as this Don Roe doctrine, that he is quite willing to divide the world into three power blocks, one of which will be China, the other will be the American hegemony over the entire Americas, and the third will be Russia. But Russia is not a strong economic or even military power. It's a client state of China now. It relies on Chinese support. If Europe was to get its act together, Europe could contain Russia. But Europe would be foolish wanting to challenge either America or China. Much better for Europe to think about doing the best deal it can get away with. Now, this is why I come back to my comments about the difference between trading, which is playing what the market's thinking today, and the long-term investment. Would you want to be a holder of US long-dated treasuries when you're wondering about who holds treasuries today and are they going to continue funding the deficit? And what would the American answer to be if there was, say, a bond buyer strike? Now, I don't think for 1 minute everyone's suddenly going to dump their treasuries. They can't, simply can't. But if they stop buying, that has definite consequences for the US. And if people start to pull out from buying US stocks, it has immediate effects on the market as well. And all these plays, to be able to understand them, you need to have a good idea of where we're going here. And I've got to say, I've never seen anything like this in 40 years in financial markets. No, neither have I.
It's just been turned on its head. And what's even more interesting is the complacency that we've seen in, financial markets that almost gives you a sense that this political chaos, this Best word I can find, Bill, is balagan, which is a Yiddish word, I believe, which just means utter chaos. The complacency or apparent complacency on the markets, makes one
Markets are
feel
pretending there's nothing wrong.
they are, and also the pretending almost makes you feel like. Are they saying this is justified?
Well,
Is this apparent no action showing that it's justified?
I'm actually very concerned about this because I spent, when I'm doing my day job, and I do have a proper job as well. Tuesdays, normally I'm up in London running around talking to investors, either in the funds that we're promoting, like Spitfire Strategic Capital, or working on other alternative deals. But what really surprises me is talking especially to Wall Street at the moment. And I meet an awful lot of people who are absolutely enthralled by what Trump is doing, and they get it. And I think that's a kind of mindset because, I worked in American investment banks, and there is definitely a mindset about, yeah, go for it. It's almost like the Marine mentality. And I definitely pick up there are an awful lot of people in the financial services market in the States who are very, very keen on what's happening because they see opportunities for preferment. They see this is business positive. This is supporting billionaires. Therefore, I will get rich on their coattails.
So
And
Bill, I
I
know
think they've
Tuesdays are
lost
really.
sight of the crisis, which is the people who voted for Trump. Now, they still, the MAGA supporters, and let's not underestimate them, they are good people, and they are not going to get their prayers answered by this government.
Now, Bill, I know Tuesdays are really, really busy for you and your time is tight. We have loads of questions that have
Sure.
come through. So let's get to them right now. So
The
someone's
world
asking.
can wait while I answer your viewers' questions.
There we
No,
are.
hold
It's
on,
question time with
Rachel, I'm
Bill.
busy.
One of them is that, are investors still underpricing the probability of a regime-style shift comparable to the 1930s in Europe?
I think that's a very, very good question. This could not be, Russia could not be luckier. And luck, of course, is a product of how hard you work and how hard you prepare something. The way in which right-wing European parties are set to destabilize the European polity. Now, I'm not as worried as I were about that because I've actually had some quite positive conversations with people at the edge of the extreme right wing in the UK. I'm not talking about the what's his name, that Tommy Sheridan or Andrew Tate ran him, but on reform. And I think there is a genuine desire on their part to put proper policies in place. My worry with reform is whether Nigel Farage can hold the whole thing together, especially as it's now becoming a refuge for discredited Tories. I am getting increasingly impressed by Kemi Badenoch as she puts the Conservatives back together. I'm also less concerned now about what's going to happen in Germany because I can see support for the centre coalescing in some ways. There are still major risks that if we get right-wing political destabilization that is fed and controlled out of Moscow, then that will damage the will of Europe to resist. And that is a clear issue.
And we've got another question coming in from David. David, it says here, I'd like to hear Bill's view on how Greenland will play out and how to position yourself financially to make the most of the situation or indeed to mitigate the damage it could cause.
Okay, so let's start off with the mitigation. Gold, simple as. Don't even think about crypto. There's a fantastic thing that I've got to write about in the Porridge, which was one of the big supporters of crypto, the guy at Jefferies, whose name I can't remember, who's been a massive crypto supporter, and he has now gone negative because of quantum computing. Fair enough. But I'd certainly say gold is the place to be at the moment if you are concerned about all these things. How will Greenland play out? Well, I would be very, very, very surprised and utterly heartbroken if this did ever get to the stage of a blue-on-blue conflict in Greenland. I think Trump is hoping to bluff his way into Greenland. And another thing that I learned yesterday, because I'm very involved in a defense fund, Spitfire Strategic Capital, look it up on the internet. It is not a retail investor friendly investment, so don't take that as a recommendation. But one of the things I learned from one of our advisors on that fund is that all of NATO's Arctic warfare specialists, like the Mountain Arctic Warfare Cadre of the Royal Marines, are either Norwegian, Finnish, Swedish, or British. Apparently, the Americans don't have any specialized troops that would be able to mount a campaign. And that's a bit similar to the Russian campaign in 1940 against Finland. So I really don't think it's going to come to conflict. But what it will do is Trump's constant bluff and bluster will further destabilize the relationship between Europe and America. And I think it was fascinating that this morning, the German press recorded a complete collapse in European trust of America. It's down to 17%.
And I'm just wondering, have you read the Kobe EC letter on President Trump's exact tariff playbook? It's quite an interesting read, Bill, about how this bluster, as you call it, is all about destabilization, and there's a step-by-step, almost like a recipe of how Trump does this destabilization on purpose to get people back to the table, but it's all part of his tariff playbook, and he just repeats it over and over again. It's a really interesting one to read if you haven't. It's a Kobe EC letter. It's not a guaranteed roadmap, but I wonder if you agree with the fact that, you know, all this, even day by day, has been preordained to somehow or another, A, get the deal done, but not, you know, take anything by force or military conflict. And also, we'll see more and more of this before the midterms.
Look, disruption and destabilization has always been part of the art of any deal. You always want to hide what it is you really want to achieve. And any of us who've worked on transactions are very aware of that. The skill, it depends, every sector is slightly different. But I think bringing this pure commercial property mentality to the complexity of dealing with global political, geopolitical relationships, and believing that you can bluff and bluster people. Well, you can do any kind of deal you want, but you cannot fool people like the Z or the UK people. And when they see this, they become upset and disgusted. Now, what I find really interesting is the way that Americans absolutely love Trump. And I'd say that the 49% of them that voted for Trump in the last election, they really appreciate him. But I fear that they mistake his naked greed for patriotism, because Trump thinks everything is transactional for himself rather than what is the best thing to do for my nation. And I'm not sure Americans see that. And I think that's the reason that so many of us outside America are so shocked and horrified, because the way that he treats us offends us. He has supported our enemies, betrayed Ukraine, and treats us as the enemies. So it's no wonder we push back, and we will not accept it. Disruption has a place, but not as the driver.